Hey everybody, thanks for joining us, and I'm having trouble talking a little bit because I can't believe I'm finally here. There's very few Civil War sites, the major ones, to which I haven't been before, and this is one of them. This is Fort Donelson. We're at the most iconic part of Fort Donelson, looking right up the river. The beauty of this scene is much cooler in person than it is, in photographs or even in videos that you've seen before. So I really think you should come to Fort Donelson and check some of these places out. The works are larger than I expected. The fighting more intense than I had really known, even having read about it a little bit. So it's really all coming together well. Just to be clear, we are standing right along the Cumberland River, and we are looking at these batteries right here. And to talk about the fort, why there's soldiers here, what they're trying to accomplish, let's bring on Greg Biggs. Greg, you already saw him at Fort Henry. He's president of the Clarksville Civil War Roundtable, the guru as far as I'm concerned on flags. No offense to anybody else who was pretty good on flags. And of course, an NPS volunteer here at Fort Donelson. Go ahead, sir.
So this is a map of the water batteries from Kendall Gott's book on the Fort Donelson campaign. The reason why these batteries are here is that Governor Isham Harris wants to defend the ingress of the Tennessee and the Cumberland River. We were earlier on the Tennessee River at Fort Henry, now we're at Fort Donelson, and they will start to lay this fort out after they site it in about May of 1861. They will send troops and construction people here to start building the batteries. Behind, or actually in front of me up on the higher ground, was the original position for the heavy guns, and they found out that it was too high up. So they moved it down to this level here. We're about 75, 80 feet above the river. So they still get what they called back in those days plunging fire, where you're shooting down into the tops of gunboats. Now, gunboats don't have armor plate on the top. Actually, the gunboats weren't even all that heavily armored. They had the bow and the midships, but there was still a number of places where there was no armor on them. So you could get plunging fire here. You couldn't get the plunging fire at Fort Henry. It was water level shooting on the angled bows of a ironclad gunboat, playing into the strengths of the gunboat. So on the 12th of February, after they've put these guns here, the guns you see behind me are 32-pound smoothbores that were captured at the U.S. Navy Yard at Gosport, Virginia, which is Norfolk, by Virginia state troops in April of 1861. They were shipped out to various Confederate forts all across, from the Atlantic seaboard to the Gulf, up the rivers, things like that. And without those guns, these forts are probably not going to exist. So you have gunboats coming to take this position. Grant's and Foote's strategy is we've defeated Fort Henry, so we can come here and do the exact same thing, not knowing the strength of the battery here, because 2 miles downstream behind me, the Confederates had strung a boom across the river. So the Union gunboats could not get recon and telescopes on this site. They had no strength of the power of the water battery here, unlike they did at Fort Henry. So with the rising river water because of the incessant rains, on the 12th of February, as Grant is marching over his troops from Fort Henry out to my right, here comes the USS Carondelet. And she pokes her nose around the bend, and she will start firing some of her 8-inch bow guns to test the battery, try to provoke the battery into firing back. Gideon Pillow orders them not to return the fire. So after a few rounds, the Carondelet realizes we're not going to get a response, and they will cut their power and let the current take them back out of around the bend. And we'll show you in a minute. We'll take a shot of where the Union logistics point is. So she goes around the bend. Grant hears the booming as he comes over, and that means his plan's falling into place. Gunboats are on the river. This is going to be great. We're going to blow past these batteries. We'll capture the Confederate logistics point, and we'll capture Fort Donelson. Well, the Confederates have something to say about that. On the 13th, Carondelet comes back around the bend again. This time, the 10-inch Columbiad to my right, the 6.5-inch rifle Columbiad to my left oblique will fire in response, and they hit Carondelet. They can hear the loud metallic clang of the solid round hitting the bow armor and denting it and then bouncing off. Well, one of the last rounds that Carondelet will fire before she cuts power will destroy this gun right here and knock it off of its carriage that you see, and a piece of that carriage will fly off and hit Colonel Joseph Dixon right about there with a piece of shrapnel and kill him instantly. Dixon was instrumental in the construction of Fort Henry in the summer of 1861. But the key event here is the Day of Iron Valentines, February 14, 1862. Grant is going to have Foote's gunboats come around the corner. Grant's bringing up more troops to the outside to circumvent the outer walls and prevent an escape. And here comes Foote with his flotilla of 4 ironclads, left to right. The St. Louis, the USS St. Louis is his flagship. USS Louisville, USS Pittsburgh, and USS Carondelet under a veteran Navy commander, Henry Walkie. So these boats are going to come in line abreast. They're 52 feet wide, 175 feet long. The river behind me is about the same width as it was in 1862. Kind of like the Tennessee River or Shiloh. So we're not talking maneuvers. It's basically coming line abreast, bumper cars, and if they get damaged, as they will, they literally can't turn around because their sterns are unarbored. They just cut their power and let the current, which is fairly swift, about 4 or 5 knots, take them out of the way. So these gunboats will come up and they're shooting uphill like this. And when you're shooting uphill, you tend to overcompensate. Most of the rounds fired by the gunboats will sail over my head and land well over the brow of this hill. In fact, a few years ago, when they were putting in a new parking lot in downtown Dover behind the courthouse, they found a beautiful 8-inch Dahlgren ball sitting there that had shot that far into the town. Meanwhile, the 10-inch Columbiad, the 6.5-inch rifle Columbiad have roared into action and will start to do some serious damage. Foote decides to close in because it worked for him at Fort Henry, and then the 832, we're now down to 7 32-pounders, roar into action about 900 yards, and they start stripping the davits and the lifeboats and penetrating the funnels and the air vents going down into the engine room. These boats are getting badly damaged. The 3 guns here, 3 of the 4 guns here, manned by Company A of the 50th Tennessee Infantry, who had trained for several days as artillerymen. One of the things they learned because of their angle was to skip solid cannonballs on the Cumberland River. And 2 of those balls will punch a hole in the bow of the Pittsburgh. And the Pittsburgh starts to go down by the bow. They uncouple the 3 bow guns, roll them to the stern to raise it up, put the pumps into overdrive. Pittsburgh cuts her power and starts to drift downstream. The pilot house of the St. Louis is penetrated. They're not the slope pilot houses that you see on the Cairo at Vicksburg. They were armored vertical boxes at this time. They don't get changed till after the Battle of Memphis. It's penetrated. Foote is wounded in that. The pilot, a civilian pilot, all civilian pilots on these boats are all killed or wounded. Foote is wounded, and in fact, he will die repercussions of that wound later on in 1863. One by one, these 3 boats are damaged, badly penetrated in the casemate, and they cut their power. Carondelet makes it, we'll keep over my shoulder about a marker buoy right there, makes it right about to that buoy over there, and she will just be literally pummeled by the Confederate artillery because she's just kind of stuck there and takes it. She's giving back as good as she can. In fact, a Naval Medal of Honor will be earned here. Gunner Matthew Arthur standing to his piece as Carondelet finally cuts power and drifts out of way, keeps firing his piece in response to the blistering fire of these Confederate infantrymen. Off to my right somewhere was Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Bedford Forrest with Parson David C. Kelly, a major in his command, and he turns to Kelly as the gunboats are approaching because of the reputation of Fort Henry, and he says, "Parson, pray, only God Almighty is going to save this fort." And Grant out there hearing the cannonade was heard 40 miles away in Clarksville, as a matter of fact. And Grant is expecting to hear the steamboat whistles of the gunboats in victory, and instead they hear the rebel yell. They're defeated. And Foote, wounded, his gunboats battered, falls back, and he wants to take them all back to either Cairo or St. Louis for repairs. And the night of the 14th, morning of the 15th, Grant is going to be meeting with Foote to beg him to keep at least 1 gunboat on the river so he can have a river threat. So while they did really well at Fort Henry, the opposite happens here at Fort Donelson.
Thanks so much, Greg. We are fighting to keep some sort of daylight, so we're going to end it right here. We've got a little bit more of this place to check out if we can. We got to talk about the actual fighting if we can, and let's do that. So with no further ado, thanks, Greg. Thanks, Chris, who is also behind the camera this time, shooting more video. Thank you all, and thank you for watching and supporting Battlefield Preservation.